Welcome to This Week in Health IT. My name is Bill Russell, Healthcare CIO Coach and creator of This Week in Health IT, a set of podcast videos and collaboration events dedicated to developing the next generation of health leaders. This episode and every episode since we started the COVID-19 series has been sponsored by Sirius Healthcare. Now we're exiting the series, and Sirius has stepped up to be a weekly sponsor of the show through the end of the year. Special thanks to Sirius for supporting the show's efforts during the crisis and beyond. Okay, ClipNotes is live and it's available. For some of you, this is a repeat. I'm saying it and you're saying, all right, I already know ClipNotes is live, but we have seen a surge in the number of listeners in the show. And so some of you, this is the first time you're hearing it. So let me tell you what ClipNotes is. If you can't listen to every show that we have, but you want to know what was on and who was talking and what they talked about, ClipNotes is an easy way to do that. You sign up for the email list, and after each show, you're going to get an email with a one-paragraph summary of what was talked about on the show, key moments in bullet point format with timestamps, and 1 to 4 video clips from the show. So this is a great way for you to stay current. It is a great way for you to share insights with your team and maintain your commitment to developing them during these extraordinary times. It's really easy to sign up. You can go to any episode page on thisweekinhealthit.com. And when you hit that episode page on your right side, you can subscribe to ClipNotes. The other way, we have another process. It's pretty simple. You send a note to ClipNotes at thisweekinhealthit.com, and it will click off a automated workflow, and you'll get an email from me, which will give you an easy link to click on and get signed up. So we're excited. The response to this has been fantastic, and it's growing every day. So really appreciate the feedback that you guys have given me to help shape the show and the services that we offer. Okay, on this show, we talk about the business of healthcare. A lot of times on Tuesday, we go into the business of healthcare, what's sort of shaping it and where it's going. We also talk about the technology of healthcare. I try to cover major shifts that I see coming down the line to signal to you the discussions that I believe are going to shape healthcare. Platforms and software-defined everything, software-defined networks, software-defined compute, storage, you name it, I think are going to drive new economics, greater business agility, and increasing business advantages for those who adopt those platforms and technologies in healthcare. Today, we're going to go in depth with one of those technologies, software-defined WANs. SD-WANs are one of the hottest things that people are talking about, and it's not hot like trendy. It's hot like it makes so much sense that organizations are starting to head down this path. So I got a panel together of an organization that is heading down this path with one of the leading organizations that is doing this, VeloCloud, which was acquired by VMware. So it's part of the VMware stack. And we have a great discussion. I hope you enjoy. When COVID hit, we had a significant change in the makeup of the network. The center of gravity shifted, and much of the traffic that used to be housed within the four walls of the health system moved outside. This was really accelerated during COVID, but we noticed that this trend was starting prior to that because home health was starting to ramp up significantly. We had IoT devices starting to take off. And the question we wanted to answer was, does the old fixed network provide us the right architecture to remain agile and flexible in the fast-moving environment that now defines healthcare? And so today we're going to explore the future of the healthcare network with these three gentlemen. We have Mike Champa, the Executive Director of Infrastructure for Steward Health. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning.
And we have David Teixeira, a partner at Tornova, who helped Steward with their selection process. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Bill.
And Craig Connor, CTO and VP of SD-WAN Group, the VeloCloud acquisition from VMware, is on the line as well. Craig, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
All right, I'm looking forward to this. The future of the network in healthcare. It's a pretty lofty title, so let's see if we can start with our feet firmly planted on the ground. Mike, we'll start with you. You recently completed the bid process for Steward Health to move to a software-defined network for Steward. So, what precipitated the change for Steward? What makes you consider SD-WAN?
So, Bill, so as you know, we're the largest physician-owned and operated healthcare system in the U.S. Over the last 10 years, we have acquired, we have gone from basically 6 hospitals to 35 hospitals. around a little bit less than 100 ambulatory practices to over 500 ambulatory practices in the U.S. We have a facility in Malta we purchased recently. We went from one state, Massachusetts, to 9 states across the U.S. So over the last 10 years, there's been a significant amount of acquisitions within Stewart, causing us to look at our network and realizing that, those acquisitions, we brought them into Stewart, but never really re-engineered the wide area network. And saying that, so obviously that caused, us a lot of pain in regards to the applications that we're running. We have over 600 to 800 applications running right now across the U.S. There has been significant latency and bandwidth issues associated with the touch of those applications.
So Mike, let's start there. So Stewart is in how many states now?
Stewart is right now in 9 states across the U.S.
9 states. How broad? I mean, is it mostly New England, or is it all the way across the country?
It's all the way across the country. It's Texas, Arizona, Utah, Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Massachusetts. Did I miss one? I think that's good.
Wow. I mean, so that covers the gambit. And so when you acquired these originally, you just left the data centers in place and sort of connected them all up through MPLS network, that kind of thing?
Yeah, they were just plugged in. Some of them were plugged in they were plugged in to get to our EMR and as well as our, obviously our network from a financial and email and communications perspective. But others were left alone with their applications in their own data centers and connecting to that.
Wow. All right. So you decide to go out and take a look at, all right, we're gonna bring these things together and try to have a coordinated architecture. And so what led you in the direction of SD-WAN?
So a number of things, right? Besides looking for improvement in our performance, our application performance, which is key, right? We're looking to lower the complexity, simplifying the operations capability, and obviously reducing cost. Over the last COVID months, let me say it that way, right? There's been a significant amount of audio video capability that needs to happen, and sitting on our current network, specifically out in the West, was not going to work at all, and that drove this initiative. Yeah.
So Brent, you've been along for the ride. You and Mike have been coordinating some of this work together. So, so lower the cost, improved agility, reduced complexity, increased performance. I mean, this sounds like sort of a holy grail here. I mean, are those the foundational elements that you were looking at, and what makes SD-WAN really work in the Stewart infrastructure?
The other thing we need was the flexibility from the capabilities that it has up and down the size spectrum of facilities that we run too. So we run everything from 2-person practices all the way up to 300-bed hospitals and more. So from a technology perspective, it has to scale size-wise. And when we went through the decision process too, you're looking for value. And value with SD-WAN comes in many different forms. Value comes in when you compare technology to technology. They're all built a little different. And when you look at the value that you're getting from a operational perspective as well, that was a huge key for us. And one of the big things that Bello brought to us was that capability to manage this whole network, regardless of applications, regardless of the size of facility that we were running.
So, David, did I just call you Brent? I think I did.
You did.
Call you
Brent. You can cut that out.
Golly day. I can't believe. Sorry, I'm coming back from vacation. I'm just trying to get back in the saddle here. So David, what does it look like before we go there? I mean, is it what we think we are? It's a ton of segmentation hard coded into the routers and switches that are managed by a team of people, and those tables get pretty complex and are relatively unforgiving. I mean, is that what we're looking at? Because that's what I remember.
And conflicting IPs. So, right. So when you look at the whole thing, it's the I don't want to say the only way, but almost the only way to clean this up and make it operationally effective is to run SD-WAN, because I hate to say this to my carrier friends, but you're commoditizing the circuits, and you're making the whole operation run on the technology that's running those circuits. You're not tied to them anymore. So that if you can manage how you run your apps on your network, it just leads to so many efficiencies across the organization.
Yeah, and this. So Craig, let's talk a little bit about this. For the most part, we saw this is pretty similar to what VMware did in the data center back in the day, right? We had 1 million machines. We had people walking through the halls, and they had to touch the machines, pull out the keyboards, and and actually physically do upgrades and that kind of stuff. We then virtualized all that stuff, and it really changed the game. I mean, we now can run data centers from afar. It enabled cloud computing at its core. And, it gave us the ability to be a lot more agile and flexible in terms of what we did. You've been at VeloCloud for a while, even before the VMware transition. So give us an idea of what are some of actually, probably start here. What is SD-WAN? Why are we even talking about it? And how is it fundamentally different from what we're doing today?
Yeah, Bill, I think, David mentioned there's a lot of different SD-WAN vendors, a lot of different definitions of the terminology these days. But I think at its core, there's a couple of different principles we're applying. The first is converting from a hardware-based processing of packets to a software-based processing of packets. Decoupling the hardware and the software to give us the flexibility to run on commodity hardware, on VMs, in the cloud, in the places where the edges of the network are moving. It also gives us the ability to simplify network management by bringing a single consolidated view of the network, often managed through the cloud itself. And third, it offers some quality benefits by integrating both QoS as well as some intelligence around application identification and link steering, so that you get not only you use commodity circuits, but you also use them better than a traditional round robin load balancing kind of solution would have done.
Yeah. I'm sorry. There we go. It's interesting because I think SD-WAN, you just rattled off the components, and much like when VMware sort of came into the game, when we looked at the hypervisor for the first time, we didn't really grasp all the things that were going to be possible, how we could redo, disaster recovery, how it would be really change the game in terms of the amount of resources it took to manage these things, the amount of visibility, the amount of new technology you could layer on top of this. For instance, the smaller it gets, the more we can overlay AI and those kind of things, so that it can become much more dynamic. How do you think this has played out during COVID in terms of, so we sent everybody home, we sent everybody to their homes, at least most of the administrative staff within hospitals, even within outside of healthcare. And, a lot of these people went to their homes. How would a SD-WAN, how would that transition have gone a little easier? Craig, I'll start with you, and then I'll come back to Mike and David with some other questions.
Yeah, I think SD-WAN, VMware SD-WAN in particular, we saw this facilitate the transition to work from home for a lot of users. I think there's a few big challenges that people ran into. The first is just scaling the solution. So everybody has some sort of remote access VPN solution. Even pre-COVID, but it wasn't designed for every single employee to be connected to it simultaneously. And so it's not necessarily very easy to scale up a hardware-based firewall in your data center that's terminating remote access connections from everywhere. So you have this scalability problem where if you've got SD-WAN and it's running in software and it can be clustered across multiple VMs, it's much more easy to scale up, especially if you're using a cloud-based solution like VeloCloud, where we take care of the auto scaling for you. So that's one thing. The second thing is obviously the quality of connectivity, the shift to telemedicine, the shift to Zoom calls like we're on right now. Quality becomes really important. And I always say there's two different aspects of quality. And one is just making the video work. But the other is balancing that against everything else that's happening in the home, because you have your family is home working, your kids are home on online schooling. And, there's two things I always bring up. One is if one other user in the house can affect a doctor trying to do a telemedicine appointment, that's one disruption for the patient. But also just if my child's online schooling isn't working because the internet's not working well enough and they need my help, then that's another distraction that happens, right? So there's almost a psychological aspect to it as well as the network quality aspect, where we need to make the network work well for everyone so that those distractions don't happen. And that's what we've seen SD-WAN actually provide to home users.
So what we were looking at before was quality of service, right? We were going to be able to tag quality of service, but we really lost that ability over the public internet. And so how does SD-WAN do that? How does it ensure the best route, the highest performance on a dynamic basis?
So every SD-WAN vendor is going to have a little bit different answer to that question. In the case of VMware SD-WAN, we've built a proprietary technology we call dynamic multipath optimization. So one or more WAN links connected to the SD-WAN device, we continuously monitor the quality of the underlay connection using either the user traffic that's traversing the network already or generating artificial probes if there is no user traffic. We take that measurement of the network, we identify the applications automatically that are coming into the system, and we map those applications to their service level objectives. So is it voice? Is it video? Is it a transactional application? Based on those two things, we can choose dynamically the best path to send the traffic on. And we can also choose dynamically if we need to apply error correction methodologies like forward error correction, jitter buffering in real time to resolve issues that are happening with the transport.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's so important in healthcare because we're gonna have PACS solutions. We're gonna have radiology reads being done at home. We're gonna have IoT devices. Potentially, we're gonna have significant build outs of home care that get more and more sophisticated over time. And that's really fascinating. Mike, I wanted to come back to you. What does a rollout of this technology look like in a healthcare environment? Is it a forklift? Is it disruptive in any way? How do you anticipate your end users will experience the transition?
Oh, but we're at we're actually implementing as we speak. So we're rolling it out in Arizona this month and turning that up, and then we'll follow that to Utah and Texas. Then we'll head back here to the I would call it the east of the Mississippi. But what it really, so to me, what it looks like for me is what it has been for me is some significant planning on our part to understand what our infrastructure looks like before we get our vendors to help us with the implementation. Right? We're using a couple of partners to help us with the implementation. They seem to be experts. They've done this thing and numerous times out in the industry. So I've utilized the partner, in addition to bringing on David to help me drive this program and this project across the U.S. The coordination and between us and the application folks has not been that difficult. So up to date, I think I think it's stayed internally to the network space primarily, and I think once we begin to do testing this before we do the turn up, we definitely will be involving the application folks for coordination of that. So it hasn't been a lot of pain once we got the design criteria and the requirements for our underlay complete.
That's interesting. So essentially, it's a pretty sophisticated market. I think some people listening to this might think SD-WAN, it's too far out there, it's too cutting edge, but you're not having trouble finding partners who have experience rolling this out for you.
No, not at all. No. And they've been extremely helpful with us because they've done this before. They have the expertise behind them. There's always a learning curve between the provider and in the customer, right? And figuring out how to get this thing with some momentum and acceleration. But certainly without them, I think it would have been a significantly longer time to turn this thing up, and we would have learned through some error.
Yeah, David, really want to talk about this from two perspectives. One is what do you anticipate the end users, how they will experience this, if at all? I mean, it might just be a negligible improvement for them, but you get so much flexibility and cost savings on the back end that that's worth it in and of itself. So talk about the end users, but also talk about the team that has to manage this. What does it look like for them to move from the existing environment to this new environment, and how do you transition that team?
So your first question about the end users, I think they're going to see better, faster applications on the network, but it's really the business that has the impact. So Steward's a little different. We're national. We're using technologies where we can use a lot of remote doctors, for example, in ICUs. So when you talk about, that kind of application for the business, it just gets experts to the field quicker, faster. So it's better for the user, the patient, the business. Everything just runs better at that point. It gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of when the business says, I want to turn this up in September, now we can do that. Once this SD-WAN is running, before it's months of just making sure everything works and the data centers are lined up, et cetera. From the operations perspective, the team that's running the network, it gives them tools that they've had before, but they're technically easier to use and get a global view of what's happening. And with some of the analytics that are going to be driven by the cloud orchestrator that we're going to be using, we're going to get some really valuable information for the business and the end users to see what apps they're really using, what the performance really is, and how we can make that better, quicker, faster for everybody.
Yeah, I'll sort of put you on the spot. I mean, when I moved our health system to the cloud, there was a huge amount of fear, like, oh my gosh, where are you going? What are you doing? What does this mean for my job? That kind of stuff. Was there some of that, or did they look at the solution and just go, oh no, that makes sense, that's what's next?
Yeah, it's a hard question, right? And you get to the heart of the team question and where the team wants to go with this. It's one of those technologies that, technically it makes it a lot easier, and you definitely need less people running the technology, but it becomes more critical for the business. And in the environment that we're all in, it's really hard to find really good people and bring them into the team. And with this kind of technology, it just makes it actually easier for everybody to do that. So I think everybody jumped on board with it and knew that we had to do it because of all the things that the business was trying to do. And this is going to make it, in the end, just a great thing for them to have the experience in.
Yeah. So actually, I want to stay with you two real quick. You put together the RFP. You went out and you looked at the various vendors. What were some of the criteria that you put forward to evaluate the various solutions? Because as Craig was saying, there are still some different definitions and different approaches to this. What were you guys? What criteria did you use?
Yeah,
okay.
Mike.
Okay, no, we can go, we can piggyback, right? I mean, we actually took a very methodical approach. We had about 12 attributes that we identified and we evaluated across, I think it was across four vendors. It was statistically, we created statistical, data that represented the decision. And we came down to, it was almost a tie. It came down to two vendors. Both vendors were strategic partners of ours, and I would say they've been with us for quite some time. And we, when we made a decision, right, based upon that. So based upon the best fit, and obviously pricing was there. It wasn't the top, but attributes around supportability, cloud capability, and the likes of ease of use and the likes of that really gave us the data that represented us and to support the decision to the CIO. So.
Yeah, that's great. David, anything to add on that?
No, Mike did a good job. I mean, we did take a really detailed look. We didn't look at every possible option, but when you're enterprise size, I think we looked at all of the vendors that we needed to look at, and it was really, there were 12 attributes, and it was value and flexibility, in long-term view.
Yeah.
For probably the three big things.
And integration with the tools you're already using. And Craig, that's where I'm going to come back to. It's interesting, we could do a whole show just on a selection process, because I see some people, it's like, we evaluated all 15 vendors. I'm like, why? Why did you evaluate 15 vendors? I mean, we could just write half of those off just by using common sense. But no, they put them all through the process. And I think sometimes it's smart to look at, who's in the upper right-hand quadrant and who's the one disruptor you want to look at. And that's probably enough. And it sounds like you guys did something to that effect.
That's exactly what we did.
Is it? Yeah. You don't have time to look at 15 vendors, and you don't want to put your team through that. Anyway, that's a tangent on my part. Craig, VeloCloud acquisition. You have security acquisitions from VMware. You have the VMware tools. You have the end user computing tools. How integrated? How far along in the integration process are you? Because I think one of the promises for healthcare is we're going to get to a single pane of glass, and I know that's the sort of the nirvana that's out there, but we'd like to get there, right? We're already used to using those VMware tools to manage all the components within the data center. We'd like the network to be brought into that. We'd like security to be brought into that. How far along are we in that journey?
Yeah, I think we've defined this new market space called SASE, which is really the convergence of four separate technologies: Zero Trust Network Access, SD-WAN, Secure Web Gateway, which now includes CASB functionality, and then cloud firewalling. And we are just starting that process at VMware. We have obviously built a big ecosystem of partners. We call it our network of clouds because we have our cloud gateway footprint. We are able to connect to a huge variety of vendors in all of those different spaces outside of SD-WAN. But we're also at VMware executing on this SASE vision ourselves. And so recently we announced our Zero Trust service along with Workspace ONE, where you can use the Workspace ONE tunnel app to connect directly into your SD-WAN network. Obviously, there's a recent acquisition of Lastline anti-malware technology. So we're looking at how we can integrate that and bring that cloud firewalling piece, and also looking at options for bringing in secure web gateway functionality. So I'd say we're in the middle of the process. The pieces are coming together. We're a bit advantaged, I think, in that if you look at the definition of SASE, this thin branch, thick cloud model, that's the approach we took with SD-WAN from the beginning, and that's not the approach that our competitors took from the beginning. And so, whereas we have this worldwide network of POPs that we've already built out to host these services, most of our competitors are still trying to get there. And then being part of VMware, you said it yourself, we have we have Workspace ONE, we have NSX security, we have a lot of different components that will allow us to build this single pane of glass solution much more easily than a vendor that doesn't have those other components in-house.
That's interesting. So if I understand you correctly, it requires a VeloCloud device at a lot of different points within the network. And what I hear you saying is that's how you originated the deployment of this. So you have those devices and all those point of presence and all those places that we need them within the network already.
Yeah, I mean, SASE is really about the compute for modern security. Those demands are getting higher and higher and higher, right? Things like TLS termination, sandboxing, browser isolation, these are very CPU intensive security operations. And it's not practical to do them on-prem and build this giant rack of servers, right? This is why the cloud is fantastic, because we have cloud scale compute for doing these intensive security things. But in order to do it practically in the network, it also has to be close to the user, because we can't send everything all the way back to some centralized location. And so what SASE promises is that we will distribute this in points of presence close to the users that are cloud scale, and we will give them high quality access to those security services, either with SD-WAN or with a ZTNA solution. And so what we've done is we've already built that network. We already give you a high quality connectivity to a regionalized set of data centers using our cloud gateways. We already give you access with Workspace ONE now. And so all we have to do is put the security services on top. We don't have to build the whole network from scratch.
So if I go to any of I'm going to simplify this a little bit more, because I'm a CIO. I'm not Mike. I'm not, I'm not a CTO type person. I'm a CIO. So how I'm thinking about this is if I'm going to one of the cloud players, if I'm going to Microsoft, AWS, if I'm going to Google, even some of the colo players, you guys have me covered. Is that essentially right?
Yes.
All right. I mean, and that's going to be important. But what about those? So Mike's network is far flung. I mean, you're covering them from Boston to Phoenix?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we've got hundreds of POPs worldwide where we have our gateways deployed. We've got 11 just in the United States. So we're able to cover with sub 10 milliseconds latency everywhere in the United States that they're deployed.
Interesting. David, Mike, I give you guys the last word, but I want to focus in on the financials. COVID has hit healthcare pretty hard from a financial standpoint. Give us some idea of where you're looking to find financial benefits from an SD-WAN implementation. I guess Mike will go to you.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a couple of places, and I'm going to flip it back over to David, because David was instrumental, which is to us in Stewart, specifically for me and the CIO, in regards to helping me with some initiatives around cost cutting. But it's going to be instrumental from a management perspective, right? From a people perspective, and although it will need less hands-on to manage it. I've told my folks that we will reallocate our resources to focus on the inside of our network, more on the LAN side, and more of in closer to the applications. So where we really want to play now is in the as close as possible to the applications, so our resources can be more more supportive to the business community and the clinical community. From a cost perspective, David has helped me, and I'm going to flip that over to him and let him speak a little bit about the financials piece.
Yeah, from a cost perspective, every customer is completely different because they all start in a different place. So you could start with someone that has not looked at the network in a while, or like Stewart, they've grown by acquisition. So you're working with what the acquired company was using. And I go through a process where I figure out what they have and then try to optimize it as much as we can with the SD-WAN technology. But what SD-WAN really lets you do is it lets you buy what you need and build as much resiliency and redundancy as close to the customer as you need to have. So in Steward's case, we have a lot more bandwidth. We've got a lot more resiliency in our large facilities. We've been able to do the same thing at the smaller sites at a smaller scale, obviously, but you can really drive cost out of the straight IT piece of the business. Maybe like you said, it'd be great to have a whole nother call, but you can talk about all the infrastructure that this eliminates the requirement for too. And it's on and on and on into the closets, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And David, you and Mike talked last week a little bit, and the word I keep throwing out on when we think in terms of platforms and software defined is agility. And you guys drove that home. It's, now there's options, not only on the IT side, but on the business side. And, acquisitions take a lot of resources, a lot of manpower. And when you have the right set of tools, you can layer them in and make those transitions a lot cleaner, just a lot easier. They're going to be complex no matter what in healthcare. They're always complex. I mean, different packs, 900 applications, you're going to have complexity. But if you can take that core level of, network, storage, system, compute, you just take that whole layer and say, look, we can put this fundamentally underneath and our team can manage it like we normally do. It makes those transitions a lot better. And Mike, that's what you were driving home to me last week on the call.
Absolutely.
So, hey, gentlemen, thanks. I think we did a good job of laying out the future of the network. If anyone has any questions, feel free to shoot me a note. I'd love to facilitate conversations with these gentlemen. Guys, thank you. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. That's all for this week. If you want more information on VeloCloud, VMware, any of these technologies, if you want to connect potentially with the guys from Steward, feel free to shoot me a note, Bill, at thisweekinhealthit.com, and I will facilitate the conversation. Special thanks to our sponsors, VMware, Starbridge Advisors, Galen Healthcare, HealthLyrics, Sirius Healthcare, ProTalent Advisors, and Health Next for choosing to invest in developing the next generation of health leaders. If you made it this far in the show, please do me a favor. You're a fan. You've listened to the entire episode. And the best way you can continue to support the show is to share it with a peer. Sign up for Clip Notes, share it that way. You could also just shoot them a note saying, hey, I'm listening to this podcast. I'm getting a lot out of it. And that is helpful as well. We're going to continue to be back every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Just a reminder. And we have now kicked off our fall schedule, and I am excited. We have so many great shows lined up for you that I'm just looking forward to the conversations myself and sharing them with you. Thanks for listening. That's all for now.